Welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, as well as the mobile app. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways to interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can also hit us up on Twitter, hashtag Giants Chat. You can follow the two of us directly on Twitter as well. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. He is at Giants WFAN. And a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So Brian Daboll spoke to the media earlier today. We'll go over that, and then we'll get into the matchup, of course, with the Raiders, as the Giants will head to Vegas for the first time ever since the last time they met the Raiders was here at MetLife Stadium, but they never had a chance to go to Sin City. So that'll be a new experience. But let's start with the makeup of the roster, and Brian Daboll mentioned that the two tackles made progress this week, Paul, Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. He says that in all likelihood they will be listed as questionable, but I think this is the first time in several weeks where if you want to read between the lines, the door is maybe slightly open. It's not definitive, but perhaps there is a chance that maybe one or two of them do get back out on the field this week.
Yeah, I think the odds are probably pretty good on the basis that both of them were getting closer last week. Now they've had another week. They've taken team reps, which is another step closer,
Sure. Yep.
Another step up, if you will. I would say right now my gut feeling says both of them are in there. And then the Giants will have to figure out, as Daboll said today, they continue to rotate their guards at practice. Does this mean that Justin Pugh has won himself a starting job and will displace one of the other guards if the two tackles are back in place? That, to me, is an even more interesting question, because I think Pugh's done some yeoman's work here in the last couple of weeks, and you could make a case for him getting into the lineup.
100%. Plus, that's why he also is so valuable, because you can move him around from position to position, and you don't need him to have several weeks working there like some of these younger guys, because Pugh has had experience at right tackle with the Giants. He's played left tackle. He's played on the interior. And that's one of the reasons why I know he wanted to play for the organization, but from the Giants' perspective, given all the injury needs, he was attractive from that standpoint because you can plug in and play. So I would not be surprised if they move him inside, but it's also good that the tackles returning gives you now some other options. God forbid somebody goes down via injury during the course of the game. Remember, Paul, they didn't have that luxury. When guys were going down, they were bringing in players who they may have just called up from the practice squad. So it's not just necessarily the potential return of the tackles, what it does for the offensive line to help navigate any potential injuries that may arise.
Well, I will say this. Thank goodness that Tyree Phillips is also here, because he's another guy who adds to the tackle-guard mixture.
Sure.
Where if someone does go down, he's got the ability. So now Pugh and Phillips both have been able to play guard and tackle in this league. And, again, look, I don't even want to think about any more injuries. Let's just hope they get their starting five out there and they stay with them for the rest of the season. But you're right. I don't even want to use the word depth when talking about this offensive line, because God knows that's a dirty word.
We're just dealing with the reality of the circumstances.
But do they really have depth for a change?
Well, I think they may, assuming those two guys play. That's why I brought it up, because it is a bit different.
We're jinxing them. We're jinxing them.
I don't think we're jinxing them. We're having a typical conversation related to football. In all seriousness, how about what it means to help navigate the tight end problem right now? Because the numbers game, that I think is even maybe more critical, Paul, than what it does to protect you from injury on the offensive line, because we know Darren Waller's out. Brian Daboll already mentioned that earlier in the week. Daniel Bellinger right now is the only tight end on the roster. They have Cager, so they could very well call somebody up, but Cager, let's face it, is not necessarily known as a blocker in terms of his strength. So if they want to go bigger at the line of scrimmage, that's why a guy like Tyree Phillips as a swing tackle is so key. You use him as a pseudo tight end, essentially.
Well, actually, last week, Coach had said that McKeithen
he was another guy.
Had a tight end package available to him. So I would assume he would be the third tight end if the Giants decide that Cager gets called up as the number 2 and they want to go to a jumbo package.
But if Phillips is no longer in the starting lineup, I'm just saying you can at least utilize him in that swing tackle / tight end role, depending on what they
have options.
Correct,
Again,
in the playbook. Yeah.
This is an incredible luxury.
Well,
I mean, come on. Are you kidding me?
And it's good to have options, especially when you're going up against one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL, and Max Crosby, who lines up on both sides, mainly across the right tackle, but he is a disruptive force if you cannot handle him and contain him. He leads the team 6.5 sacks. He has 10 tackles for loss, which is up there in the league, right with Danielle Hunter or the Minnesota Vikings. So I would say the more the merrier on the offensive line. Not a bad thing in terms of timing.
He's a heck of a lot more dangerous than Bing.
Yeah, well, if you want to put it in that perspective, yes. As far as what Brian Daboll also brought up with respect to the inner workings of the roster, the kicker. Graham Gano is going on injured reserve. I know there were a number of reports, but now Daboll made it official, and the Giants have since announced it. So he's going to be sidelined. So they now have two options. Randy Bullock, they added him to the practice squad. He was briefly with the Giants in 2016 when he replaced Josh Brown. And then they signed Cade York off Tennessee's practice squad. So York is on the 53. Bullock is not. When you sign a player off the practice squad of another team, you have to put that player directly on the 53.
Yeah.
Now, York is a younger guy. He was a fourth-round pick of the Browns in 2022. Had a pretty solid rookie campaign. He was 24 of 32 on field goals. He was 35 of 37 on extra points. And then surprisingly, he struggles in the preseason, and Cleveland acquires Dustin Hopkins from the Chargers, and they decide to waive York after 1 year. It's amazing. Just a quick side note, these teams, they use draft picks, which are relatively high.
A fourth rounder.
Right? And then after 1 year, they move on from a guy?
Fourth round.
Very bizarre.
That's an awful high choice to just discard after one poor training camp or preseason.
Yeah.
Wow.
You would think you'd give a young guy like that more leeway. So that was surprising.
He has a cannon of a leg, by the way. I will tell you, folks, I just got a chance to watch him outside, just run through a kickoff drill. The ball exploded off of his feet, off his foot, I should say. He didn't use both feet to kick it.
I would hope not, yes. I'm not sure if the rules would accommodate that, yes.
Tremendous height and arc, end over end. You could hear it explode. Had great speed on it as it went through the back of the end zone. I mean, this was an absolute bomb. So leg strength, not an issue for this kid, who I think is only, 22 years old?
Yeah, he's a young guy. I mean, he's just out of LSU. Let's see, he's 22, and he's not going to turn 23 until January.
Yeah, it really, he was off the Tennessee practice squad, as you said. It's surprising that, A, Cleveland would give up on him, B, that no other team would sign him to the 53, that he would land on a practice squad, and now here we are midway through the season, and somebody finally decides to scap him up. I don't know exactly what was going on there with him, but you're talking about a young guy who, look, the Giants are going to have him and Randy Bullock actually have a kickoff.
They're going to compete
during practice. And Daboll said, it's not decided who is going to kick on Sunday against the Raiders. Even though, at the moment, Bullock is on the practice squad and York is on the 53, they may use an activation for Bullock.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, it would be unusual to have two kickers active, but under these circumstances, if you're sort of on the fence and you're not sure exactly who you want to go with, or maybe, Paul, they want to see what happens in pregame warmups and how the guys react to the environment. You're not outdoors, so that's a positive. They may have the ability to do that. Keep in mind, though, here's where things get in that gray area. Matt Barkley is a candidate to be called up from the practice squad.
Sure he is.
With Tyrod Taylor out. Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito. So you may have to use one spot for a quarterback.
You need one for Cager, too.
Okay, so we just named two. I would say it would be very difficult to eat up one of those spots, given the other dynamics on the roster for a kicker. So I would think that they're going to have to get some conclusion by the end of practice today to determine who they want. But here's the thing, Paul. Let's say in a hypothetical world, Cade York struggles and Randy Bullock outperforms him. What do? Then you cut York and you add Bullock to the 53 so that you don't have to eat up an elevation?
Well,
or you add Barkley or Cager to the 53, I guess. You make a transaction with respect to that.
That will cost you some money. The rule when you pilfer someone off of a practice squad, is that he has to go to your 53 and get 3 regular season full-fledged game checks. Now, you can cut him.
Sure, but he's still owed that money.
For
obviously.
example, tomorrow, the Giants could cut York and promote Bullock to the 53, and Bullock could be the only kicker on the roster against the Raiders. However, the mandate is that York, now that he's on the 53, you have assigned him to it, he gets 3 full-fledged game checks. Whether or not you keep him, he gets 3 full-fledged game checks. That would be a pretty expensive tryout if you were to cut him tomorrow and now have to pay him 3 full weeks of game money for one day because he had a bad tryout. That doesn't sound like a very prudent thing to do.
Which also leads me to believe that I think that he was appealing, and that was more of a reason why they grabbed him off of Tennessee's practice squad. Also, Bullock, street free agent, veteran. If York struggles for some reason, you could always make a roster move a week or 2 down the road.
How ironic is it, by the way, that Bullock was with Tennessee last year?
Yeah, he was in week 1, the one that went wide.
Had a good season for them. And so he comes from Tennessee, in effect, after sitting on the couch, a la Justin Pugh. and they get York from Tennessee's practice squad. So they get 2 former Titans in the same day.
They like their kickers from Nashville, apparently, in terms of bringing them in. But Graham Gano tried to fight through the knee issue, and now they're going to be turning a new page to a pair of kickers. As part of the dialogue here that I want to get to is the matchup against the Raiders. And it's been some week in Vegas, given all the changes.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of the land of the unknown. You don't know how this team is going to respond. You don't know whether or not they're going to have some tricks up their sleeve on offense. I will say this. Most teams that make changes, whether it be coordinators or coaches, they played Monday night. Okay, so they even have a shorter week than most teams. Mm-hmm. It would be highly unusual that they would completely revamp their offense and the quarterback coach is all of a sudden going to bring in a new scheme. That's not happening. Plus, you got a rookie quarterback who's made 1 start and 1 other appearance. So I think they're going to be running a lot of what they did under Josh McDaniels. The main difference is, Paul, you have a new play caller because, see, your head coach was your play caller. So that changes, and that to me is the newness that you have to try to anticipate with respect to the Raiders. So, for example, is this new play caller, is he going to say, hey, this is going to be a Josh Jacobs game? We're going to emphasize the run. Or is this going to be a game where we're going to have Aiden O'Connell air it out a little bit? I think that's the more of the guessing that the Giants have to determine as opposed to where they're going to line people up. They don't have enough time to flip the switch and go in a completely different direction. So if there's any changes, it's more of this quarterback's coach has never called plays before. And the other thing to keep in mind is Scott Turner, who is the passing game coordinator, was formerly the Commanders' play caller many years under Ron Rivera. I wonder how much of a prominent role he'll play, if anything, with respect to even the play calling. Because remember, all they announced was the quarterback's coach is the offensive coordinator. If you're the OC, that means you're just putting the offense together. That doesn't necessarily mean, Paul, that you're calling the plays.
That's true.
So I'm just going to throw that out. Maybe Scott Turner actually is going to be the guy at the controls. Just something to keep in mind here.
I asked Jason Pinnock the other day about this change, and I said, look, you've been in the league now for 3 years. You know the opponent has just changed coordinators and coaches. They even changed quarterbacks.
Yeah, everything.
I said, but they played Monday night. So realistically, how much change do you have to be ready for? And he said, look, there's not that much they can do because the schemes and the playbook, those are pretty much set. They're not going to change the playbook. The playbook is what it is. Now, what they may do, they may decide to use different plays in different spots. That they could do. Maybe they throw in 1 new play as a wrinkle, okay, because they're able to get their guys to practice that for a day. But the playbook isn't going to change. They don't have enough time. They didn't announce that until a day after the Monday night game that they were making these changes.
Yeah, Tuesday night.
So the Raiders will have a Wednesday practice, a Thursday practice, and a Friday practice, followed by a Saturday walkthrough. I mean, the only thing they can do is maybe emphasize different plays that are already in the playbook. And again, use them in different situations. Maybe they could shuffle personnel, right? And say, okay, maybe a receiver was playing the X. Now they say, all right, we want you to play the Y this week.
Yep.
They could shuffle some personnel around and give you a little bit of a different look. But the plays are the plays at this point. You're midway through the season, Lance. I mean, you've seen a playbook. There's a lot of stuff in there. It takes a whole off season to make one.
I mean, it's a textbook you're talking about. The other thing I'll add is they could maybe tap into personnel that also has not received much playing time. The one guy that comes to mind is Hunter Renfrow. Could we see maybe more of him who had not been exposed on the field much this
player
season?
Deployment, as I say. That's
exactly.
That may be the biggest thing you could see different. Is that they decide we're going to use different players, different numbers of snaps, or in different spots. But the plays are the plays.
Yeah, because Renfrow comes to mind only because he's played 38% of the snaps. And I know there's been a call for him to maybe get some more opportunities. So that is a player to keep in mind, and maybe he has a decent rapport with Aiden O'Connell, the young quarterback. As far as the Raiders' defense is concerned, I think this is an improved unit compared to last season. I mean, last season, they could not get after the quarterback other than Max Crosby, and they were not very opportunistic. They were actually tied with the Giants for the fewest interceptions. This season, we're seeing Crosby still deliver. Tyree Wilson's been quiet, the first-round pick. He was hurt in the preseason and training camp, so he's still coming into his own. They've had some opportunistic plays. Marcus Peters had the pick six against the Lions. The one area, though, that they have struggled immensely with, and this is where it's very attractive for the Giants, is they are 30th against the run. So you're coming off a game in which Saquon pounded the ball, got a high volume. I'm not saying that he's going to get 36 carries again, but if you're the Giants, you're staring at the one major problem for this Raiders defense. The linebackers are not very big. They have not been able to tackle and bring guys down. I mean, look at what Jahmyr Gibbs did Monday night. This could be a very attractive Saquon Barkley game.
They're giving up 140 yards a game on the ground, 4.5 yards a carry. You want to play bully ball against that defense. Now, Antonio Pierce, who has as much fire in him as a stick of dynamite, is going to have those guys ready to play. They will, I guarantee it, from his pregame speech, they are going to come out like a house of fire. They will play hard. They will play to the whistle. They will play all 60 minutes and then some if they need more than that. But it doesn't change the fact that they are not an overly big, strong, powerful defense. So you can have all the emotion in the world, but if the bigger, stronger Giants offensive line, which we think is going to be on the field, and Barkley running hard, that should be able to take some of the sting out of that excitement that the Raider defense will put on the field. That's the best way to take the emotion out of them, is to beat them up, is to bludgeon them and play bully ball.
Plus, you also don't want Max Crosby to have an opportunity to wreck this game. And I know he's very good against the run, don't get me wrong, but if you do not run the ball effectively on early downs, and now you put Daniel Jones in passing situations, that's where Crosby wreaks havoc. And keep in mind, even if Andrew Thomas does return and Evan Neal, okay, you're still going to probably see Crosby line up against both. I know he's been mainly against the right tackle, but something tells me they're going to try to, especially two guys coming off an injury, you wouldn't try to test them.
Of course they
will.
To
see whether or not they're rusty.
And he plays virtually every snap.
Yes.
He does not come off the field.
Not at all. Yep.
And you mentioned against the run. How about this? Tied for second in the NFL, 10 tackles for a loss. So don't think, he's not one of those Simeon Rice guys who cheats by just going after the quarterback, or for you newer folks, Chase Young, who simply just wants to rush the passer, and you can run on him all day long if you want to. That's not the case with Max Crosby. This guy plays both very effectively.
Join us Sunday, November 5th at Blue Ale House in Riverdale, New Jersey to watch the Giants take on Las Vegas. Enjoy Modelo drink specials, meet a Giants legend, and enter a raffle to win game tickets and more. You can visit Giants.com/Barn Network to learn more. A few other reminders before we open up the phone lines here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Giants Huddle Podcast. You can check that out on your favorite podcast platform. You could also go to Giants.com/podcasts. Single tickets are available moving forward here in the 2023 regular season. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium. Visit Giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. And the Giants' official connected TV streaming app is Giants TV. It brings you original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. All right, let's open up the phone lines as we move forward here on Friday's edition of BBKL. Bob is in Pennsylvania joining us here. What's happening, Bob?
How you doing, guys? I mainly wanted to call. I'll get to this about the Graham Gano situation. To me, a lot of that stinks. Of they're trying to make a scapegoat here. But first, I'd like to preface. I don't call that often, so don't hang up on me. I'm a 51-year season ticket holder. I started in 1973, Paul. Remember the Yale Bowl?
Yeah, 73, actually. Their first 2 home games were at Yankee Stadium before they went to the Yale Bowl.
Well, I didn't get those games, but
okay.
I got my foot in the door.
I was at Yale Bowl. I know what that place was like.
Right. So, okay, I'm 18 years old, and I'm driving to New Haven area right after I got my license. So I've been through it all. I'm going to Vegas tomorrow. I'm 4.5 hours away in Western PA to drive to these games. I go to like 2 or 3 road games. I went to Arizona. I'm going to New Orleans. I'm going tomorrow to Vegas. But I left that stadium. I've been through it all. I went to all 5 Super Bowls, a lot of road games, a lot of road playoff games, and I walked out of that stadium saying, I'm done. It's like next year I'm watching on TV. I'll be number 1 fan, but I'm done. That I don't really feel the management gives a crap about me. Otherwise, maybe they would have put a retractable dome on that place when they built it with all these PSLs from 2 teams. But that being aside...
Okay, hold on. I need to address this because I have great respect for your fandom, and I appreciate where you're coming from because I can relate to a lot of what you just said. But I want you to know 2 things. There is nobody on the face of this earth who hurts more after a Giants loss than John Mara, and you can you can second that for me.
Sure.
Now, in addition to that,
not as much me probably.
No, he hurts a lot more than anybody on this planet. Trust me.
I'm still not over
Trust
this
me.
game.
And he's still not over when Joe Namath ran into the end zone to tie the game in 74, and then threw the overtime pass to Emerson Boozer to beat us. Okay, he's still not over that. He's still not over that. So please do not. But don't try.
I'm sitting in the rain for 2 games.
With all due respect, with all due respect. John Mara hurts more than anybody on this planet, and when I tell you that, that's a fact. It's not an opinion. Now, number two, I got to give you one more. When you're a fan of a team for as many decades as you have been, there will be games that will be gut punches against you, and there will be games that will be gut punches for you. I
can't remember any games we won like this Jets and the Joe Pisarcik
when you talk about dramatic last-second or last-minute victories, how about the 2 wins over the Patriots in the Super Bowl, the win over the Bills in the Super Bowl, the overtime win against Green Bay in the playoffs, beating San Francisco in the playoffs? You don't think those were gut punches for the other team?
I
guarantee it.
Those you just mentioned.
Right. So my point is, if you've been a fan of a team for 50 years...
I'm not giving up on the Giants. I'm just saying, it's kind of like... something stinks, though, where they're always trying to... Dable seemed, I thought that... I thought McAdoo was a good coach after the second year. No. I thought Joe Judge was going to be good, but he exposed himself the second year. And Dable, he forgot everything from last year. He signed Randy Bullock. Does he forget who missed the field goal in that game? Jeez. It's like
Bob, has Graham Gano missed field goals prior to this year? I mean, I don't understand calling out Randy.
I want to get into Graham. That's my whole
but you're calling out Randy Bullock for missing a field goal in Week 1 against the Giants last season? As if that defines his career?
I've watched Randy Bullock over the years, Lance. He stinks.
All right,
Okay. All right. So he's on the practice squad right now. Cade
I
York.
want to ask Paul one question.
Please understand, the general manager signs, cuts, and trades players, not the head coach.
I understand.
And you just
that.
said
He's
Bullock.
part of it.
You just said Dable signed Bullock. That's not correct.
No. I'm talking about the whole thing where they're scapegoating this guy. He's kicking kickoffs out of the end zone. There's nothing. Did you see the 2 field goals that he missed?
I've
seen him on.
All right. Hold on. Look, I'm giving you a lot of leeway here because you're a good fan. You're a great fan, so I'm giving you a lot of leeway. But I also got to make sure that you got the facts right. They're not scapegoating Graham Gano. Gano went to see the doctor last week with his sore knee. He's got a bad left knee. He went to see the doctor, and he said to the doctor, I can kick with it. I think I can kick with it. I think I'm going to be okay. He told Coach Dable that. He told Coach McGahee that. And so they allowed him to kick in the game. He went to see the doctor again yesterday. They talked it over, and they decided, you know what? Maybe it's best that you have knee surgery now. So nobody is making Gano a scapegoat. This is a decision between him and the medical staff. Do you please understand that? This is a Gano decision.
All right, I believe you that Graham Gano should be on IR, but I looked at this tape of those 2 kicks that he missed, and first of all, when he didn't want to run it, I was livid because I remember we did get one blocked and run back. That's why
that was against the Cowboys.
We lost the best player on the roster for half the season because of that play.
Thomas Sammy. I understand.
But I believe, now I have no proof of this. I believe that Graham Gano felt the pressure coming up the middle, and he purposely kicked those to avoid the rush. Both of those looked like they were going to be blocked.
Well, yeah, Will McDonald, absolutely. And we appreciate the phone call, Bob. Will McDonald on the second one jumped over the line. And Thomas McGahee yesterday actually mentioned that it was an illegal formation because McDonald was in the frame of the center. Not the contact and the leaping part. It was just where he initially lined up.
His pre-snap positioning was actually illegal, and the play never should have been allowed. And the 5-yard penalty for illegal formation would have given the Giants a first down.
Yeah.
Whereby then DeVito could have kneeled on the ball and the game's over.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
the bottom line is it wasn't called. But as far as Gano reacting and responding to that, sure, I could see that have happened. I think Gano actually even sort of acknowledged it in his post-game.
Well, he took it on himself because he's a
but
pro.
What I'm saying
he just said he missed the kick.
But then maybe it was McGahee who was asked about, did McDonald, you think, impact
McGahee said it could have.
And McGahee said it could have. And I think if you don't have to be a kicking expert to notice the fact that McDonald got a really good jump on the ball, okay, and all of a sudden Gano is seeing that and he thinks about what happened in the Dallas game. Sure, could he have adjusted how he was trying to attempt to kick?
Potentially.
It's possible. I mean, we haven't heard him confirm, but it's not a stretch. But once again, I don't understand that being the point of the last caller. Anyone in that position may have adjusted too if you think your kick is going to be blocked. So I don't understand how that becomes a scapegoat scenario.
Just so the folks out there understand, the reason that there's supposed to be a penalty there is that they're trying to protect the long snapper.
Yeah.
They don't want the long snapper to get hurt. So what they did years ago, some years back now, I can't remember exactly. Do you know how many years ago it was?
It was several years back.
They put in a rule that said, okay, you cannot contact the long snapper on an attempted block, nor can you line up within his shoulder blades from shoulder to shoulder. McDonald lined up halfway across the long snapper's left shoulder. That's Kreider, of course. That made him illegally lined up pre-snap before the ball was actually hiked. How the officials missed it, I will never know because it's pre-snap. How can you not see an illegal formation, illegal lineup? I cannot imagine that. But that's what happened. The player executed the leap, which was clean.
Yeah, and he didn't make contact with anybody.
Did not make contact with anybody.
And you can't use another player for leverage when you jump, which he did not as well.
And he also did not have a running start, which you cannot use.
Yeah.
So everything about his leap was clean, but his formational lineup was not. And play continued, and the kick was missed, and what are you going to do? It is what it is.
And Wanye Thomas, who blocked the one for the Cowboys, he was coming from the left side. He was not in the vicinity
Correct.
of the long snapper.
Correct.
So if you want to go back and look at that, it's not a question of that, nor did McGahee raise that after week one.
Well,
he
no.
just talked about McDonald happened to be lined up in the vicinity of the center where he was making his jump. Wanye Thomas was more off to the left and not in the vicinity of Casey Kreider. So the dynamics were a little bit different in terms of both of those plays. Let's head back to the phone lines. We've got Eli in Long Branch joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Eli?
Hey, how are you guys? How's everything?
We're doing all right. What's on your mind?
What's going on? So I wanted to make a couple of quick points. Just stick with me here, please. What do you call it? Number one and everything, going back to your previous point and everything, I'm just curious and everything. This is that we were talking about a second ago with the illegal formation and everything. Can you not challenge that and everything?
No,
Like
no.
It's the pre-snap thing and everything?
Cannot challenge
You know,
it,
like-
and besides, it's in the final 2 minutes of the game, which means the booth review has to be from upstairs.
Yeah, remember, not everything is
Right.
reviewable in the NFL.
You know,
Nor should it be.
Nor could the
Yeah,
Giants
well, no,
have challenged the Thibodeau offsides call, which, as you've seen the video, I'm sure online, he's timed the snap perfectly. That offsides call against Thibodeau was also not the correct call, and that gave the Jets extra time because they stopped the clock for the offsides penalty. So, in effect, the Jets were like a baseball team that had 5 outs in the bottom of the ninth, and they
Yeah,
took
I mean,
advantage of it. What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, the officials did an awful job in that game in general. But I do think you should be able to get challenges. It's pre-snap kind of thing that's easily able to see and everything, whether or not,
Well, you know,
Again,
it's-
final
let's
2
see.
minutes, though. You can't. Final 2 minutes.
Right,
It doesn't
that is
matter,
true.
pre-snap or
Yeah.
not.
Well, but it doesn't even matter because the league can't review that anyway based on the rule book,
Right.
even if it's under 2 minutes. It goes back to a few years ago, if you remember, they put pass interference under the microscope. That was an absolute mess. And I think they learned their lesson that these subjective calls, if you put them in a situation where you review them, it's still going to be subjective based on the interpretation. It's not worth it.
See, now this is where the Sky Cam or the Sky Ref could have come into play because, as you have discussed with me in the CFL, they have.
Yeah.
They have that opportunity. And if the Sky Judge is up in the press box and he's looking at the end zone camera and he sees there is a field goal block player lined up within the shoulder blades of the center, he can absolutely buzz down. He could say, hold it, time out. That's illegal formation. But-
Assuming the rule book allows that. of
Right,
course, though.
right.
That's
If
the thing.
the
Yeah.
rule book would allow that, if
Yeah.
you had a Sky Judge who would be given the power to say, look, you can do this. You can buzz down anytime you want or in the final 2 minutes of each half if you want. You can give all kinds of parameters you want to the Sky Judge. But I would think, to your complaint, you'd like to know why that play cannot be reviewed. Well, the rules don't allow it, but would there be a set of rules that might allow it if you were able to use a Sky Judge? Potentially, you could configure the rules where you could fix that problem.
I mean, I think based on the
I
trends, the league has gone more in the direction of limited replay review as opposed to increasing it more. I mean, Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, if you remember, a few weeks ago, they played the Browns, and there were missed calls, and he was campaigning for everything
Yeah,
under
I know.
2 minutes, which to me is the extreme. And
Yeah.
I'm not for that at all.
That's really far. That's
Yeah.
really taking it far. But I would concur that at any time a Sky Judge sees a illegal formation, once that ball is snapped, he should be able to buzz down, stop play. Okay, the officials could blow the whistle, stop play, and they could penalize the illegal formation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well,
I'd like to see
I mean,
that.
once again, that has to be approved by the competition
No
committee.
doubt.
There's many different layers to this.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah. What else you got?
I do think we should be able to review like pre-snap penalties and things like that. But yeah, what do you call it? It's also why did we let go of Gunnar Olszewski? So we let him
They did.
go.
They put him on the practice squad. He was waived and
put
put
him
back
on
on the
the
practice
practice
squad.
squad?
Yeah, he's back on
And
the
the plan is to promote him for the game.
Yeah, and that's another guy we didn't mention earlier, by the way. So quarterback, tight end, return man, kicker. Can't elevate everybody.
Well, it looks as though, let's see, Gano's going to IR, so that's going to be a spot they'll have. And also Tyrod Taylor is potentially going to injury reserve, so that would be another roster spot that they would have available.
Well, but I'm assuming, didn't Cade York take the spot of Gano? Gano went on IR and they signed Cade York. I would assume that was a swap from that standpoint.
That
right?
was, well, they had actually had a spot open when they traded Leonard Williams.
They had a spot. Okay, so
Because
then
they got 2
another
picks
more
back
flexible.
for a rostered player.
Gotcha.
So they had a spot already for him.
All right, Eli. Well, we appreciate the phone call. Thanks for giving us a ring here. Let's head back to the phone lines. We got, is there more to Big, Pearson? It's just Big. Okay, Big is in New Jersey. Fair enough.
Big.
Welcome to the program.
Big was a star on an HBO drama series, I believe, wasn't he?
How you doing? How you doing, guys? I just wanted to call and say I've been a Giants fan for over 35 years. I was at the Washington Giants game with my sister and my brother. He's a Washington fan, unfortunately. And I got a chance to meet Paulie Dots. And I just wanted to say, I've been a Giants fan going back to, Fairleigh Dickinson. I got a lot of autographs, Albany, this and that. But you took the time out and you took a few pictures with my sister. She had, some health issues, 5 strokes. She's 51. So I just want to say I appreciate your time on that Sunday morning.
You're very
I don't
welcome.
really get a chance to call.
Well, God bless. I hope she's doing well. She seemed pretty good that day.
Well, she lives with me, and I'm a nurse, so I take good care of my sister.
Good for you.
She's my older sister. Yeah. But I just wanted to say, really, I appreciate your time. You didn't have to do that. You was talking to somebody in front of the pregame show. I tried to, of course, meet Jonathan Casillas, but he was on with Smelky. So I just wanted to say, I appreciate your time.
You're very welcome.
I was. You're the Godfather, so it was truly a blessing.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your interest, and you're very kind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure thing.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. And just go Giants, man.
All right, Big. Appreciate the phone call. Let's move along here. Scott is in New York. Scott, welcome to the program. What do you got for us?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Hi.
All right. What's on your mind?
All right. Well, like Paul, with these losses, they eat on me, and I hate to rehash the Jet game again, but it's been eating on me since Sunday afternoon about 4:30 all through this week.
Oh, this will take years. It may take decades. I get it. It's okay. It's okay.
It's adding more gray hairs to my head, guys. It really is. But a couple of quick points I just want to bring out, and I'll be very fast on them as I can. The 4th down play, I don't know if anybody has brought it up, but I didn't understand. I know Dable let the clock run down. He took the timeout. Why did they not rush to the line and try to draw the Jets off? They were undisciplined throughout the game. Let them think that you're going to go for it, or at least try to make them jump. And if you don't jump, you call that timeout. And then what I would like to see them do is, have a timeout, go back in and have an empty backfield, put Barkley out wide, 3 trips to the left, tight end on the right covering the right tackle, and have Barkley spring across the formation, pretend like you're going to pitch it to him, and then have DeVito run out, and if there's nothing there, have him sky the ball as high as he can towards the end zone for a jump ball, at least waste some time.
Well, I don't know about a jump ball, Scott. I mean, that doesn't sound very safe in terms of a jump ball down the field in that situation.
Well, at the end zone. I mean, right at the end zone line. I mean, it's not. What if one of the Jets intercepts it mistakenly?
Scott, I honestly understand your creativity on this. I understand trying to draw them off sides. That's a logical play. It's logical to go for the fourth down and 1. I personally would have preferred going for it myself. But there's also logic in kicking the field goal. Because if you think you know I'm going to make it, you're telling the Jets they've got to go the length of the field to score a touchdown. And if you watch that game, you knew there's no way the Jets were scoring a touchdown. So in reality, the field goal takes Zerline's 60-plus yard field goal attempt out of the game. Because you remember now, Zerline has had more than one 60-yard
He's
field
got a very
goal
strong
make
leg. Yeah.
in this league. So if Gano kicks that field goal, you're saying that Zerline's field goal attempt is out of it, and they've got to go the length of the field against this defense. And there's no way in 500,000 years that Jets offense was going the length of the field to score a touchdown. So I understand the logic that Dable used. I personally would have preferred to go for the 4th and 1. I certainly would have tried to draw them off sides. But you know what? I get what he decided. Sometimes there's actually more than one logical answer for a question. And hindsight is always going to tell you which one worked and which one didn't.
Well, because you're operating based on the result.
Right.
The fact that the kick missed. If the kick was made and the Giants' defense holds, then nobody is questioning the decision to go for the field goal. So, I mean, that's what life is all about. You're looking at it through the lens of the result. And
but I appreciate the thought.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's arguments to be made on both sides of the equation. But the other thing about running a play or trying to catch, Scott, the Jets off guard, you have to understand. The Giants at that point, had 7 pass attempts with Tommy DeVito? I mean, the Jets essentially, they knew what the Giants were doing on every single play. So I don't really think at that stage in the game you were going to dramatically put them in a spot where they were going to be undisciplined. I just don't see that happening.
You could have tried a hard count and just...
Well, no, that, but no, I'm talking about trying
to
run a play where you're thinking about throwing the ball and they truly buy into that. That's what I'm getting
If you're
at.
going to run a play, there are probably a lot of different plays in the playbook that could have been potential options. But nonetheless, they decided not to run a play, so it is what it is. You know, it just would have been nice if the Jets didn't get 5 outs in the bottom of the 9th to win the game. Right. You know, to be honest with you, that kind of galls me more than the decision to go for the field goal. You know, I mean, when you give the other team 5 outs, and that has nothing to do with you, but it has to do with other people on the field, that's pretty disgusting to me.
Well, I said so many different scenarios they could have played. I was just really aggravated that they didn't. I mean, I didn't like the call going for the field goal because he missed one earlier. He has an injury on the leg as it is a plant leg.
Understood.
And their special teams has not been good at all this year. I would have taken that. Listen, if we can't get a yard on 4th and 1, we got a lot of issues. But I mean, Dable was all in for it last year, going on 4th and 2s in the opening game.
I know.
It seems like he's
taking
his foot off the gas a little bit this year, and it's very, very frustrating because, like you said earlier this week, 2 4th and 1, 2 1-yard plays, and we're 4 and 4.
I know.
Well, I think, though, it goes back to, and Scott, appreciate the phone call, and it's fair to bring up the aggressiveness that Dable showed, especially earlier last season in the opener against Tennessee, but now you have different dynamics. Right, and play on the roster.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an excuse. I do think they went into the game, even if Tyrod Taylor played the entire game, saying, hey, it's going to be a bad weather game. The Jets have a good defense. We're not going to give them any gifts. We're not going to give them favorable field position, and we're going to grind it out. I truly believe that was a big emphasis and a selling point during the course of the week.
Absolutely no doubt.
That, to me, is not a facade that is being thrown out. And then what made it even more of a conviction argument was when Taylor goes down, and now you're turning to a quarterback that has not played one regular season snap. Now you feel even stronger about that game plan to go out and emphasize the run.
Just remember this. Gano makes that field goal. Zerline's game tire on the final play is irrelevant. It doesn't happen.
The defense still needs to make stops. Let's not forget about that.
You can give them 60 yards on 2 pass plays, and it won't matter. Gano makes the field goal. They got to go all the way to the end zone. You can give up back-to-back 29 and 28-yard pass plays, and it does not matter.
Well, and that's why I still go back to, though, and we've talked about this on Monday's show, that the defense still had ample time, though, to even prevent them from getting into field goal range. And I think the Giants, they felt pretty good about how the game flowed at that point, how well the defense played. So, that was another part of the logic. Dable saying to himself, what have the Jets done the entire game? We're going to go for the field goal.
I know.
We're going to put the Giants' defense in a position where all they have to do is keep the Jets out of the end zone. And I buy, once again, that rationale as well. It didn't go according to plan, and unfortunately, they suffered a heartbreaking loss. But you could say, keep the offense on the field, try to seal it, and you could also say, hey, based on how the game flowed, you have faith in your defense. Holding true. I think you could look at it easily both ways. But they stuck with the game plan that they had going into the week. And how do you blame them based on the fact that, once again, what did the Jets do up to that point?
And actually, they executed correctly because the illegal or the erroneous offsides call against Thibodeau is what stopped the clock and allowed them to spike the ball. The truth is, Thibodeau was not offsides. You can look at the tape all you like. He was not offsides. So the fact even that they gave up the 29 and 28-yard pass plays, that meant nothing because the defense executed what they wanted to do. They forced the Jets to throw 2 long passes that ate up the time on the clock, and the Jets never, according to the way the plays ran, had the offsides not been called, the Jets would have never been able to get up to the line and spike the ball. So the Giants executed exactly like they were supposed to. And they were given a free penalty timeout, which allowed them to get to the line and spike it with 1 second to go. Wink's defense did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Well, and he talked about that during his presser the other day. He said they wanted to keep everybody in front of them. That's the goal in a situation like that. Unfortunately, you had some penalties in play. But as I say every time, penalties...
Or a penalty not in play.
Well, but penalties go against every team in the
I know,
NFL, Paul.
I know.
You know, you could sit here and you could rip every hair out of your head. It's not going to change anything. That's the thing.
The problem with this league right now is that officials' calls or non-calls have much too much impact on the games. That's
on
because,
every game, though.
That's correct.
Every single
That's correct.
football game is determined by the officials.
And that's because there is so much mediocrity that, you know, coaches will say that there's 4 or 5 plays every game that turn a game around. Well, the problem is there's so much mediocrity, there's so many teams packed together that 1 or 2 missed calls, in this case 2 botch calls at the end of the game, wound up changing the result of the game. It happens in this league all the time. That's what stinks.
Yeah, but once again...
And I'm just using this as an example of an epidemic that's around this league right now. This happens a lot around the league. We only notice during the game we're watching.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
It happens around the league a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
Yeah, but
it's a shame.
But doesn't that happen in the NBA with the officiating?
You always wish you could get better, more efficient officiating in every sport.
Because they're
every
humans.
game.
They're humans. Are they not?
I know.
They make mistakes like everybody else.
I know.
They miss calls like everybody else. So, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody should feel good about it, but there's got to be a point where you understand the landscape. Umpires miss calls if you go back to replay. My feeling is, and this is
every league now has replay.
Yeah.
NHL, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. Every
you have the
league now has
technology,
replay.
but I think you do have to walk the fine line of how much is too much. Okay?
I know.
Because, Paul, you talk about all of these plays and how close they are. Do you want them stopping the game every 5 seconds to look at every single play? Because that's what it would take to get to the level that you're calling for. You'd have to stop every single play, go back and look at every play, and determine whether or not you missed something. And that, to me, is not real life.
I'm in favor of a sky judge who might have the opportunity to buzz down and say, oh, wait a second now. In the final 2 minutes of a game, the sky judge may be able to see something either on the monitor or from his vantage point that the guys on the field can't. And if that means they've got to play another 10 minutes longer and screw up the TV window, well, too bad, because I'd like the game to be officiated correctly. I'm sorry. And that's universal. I don't care if the Chiefs are playing the Raiders. Yeah. I'd like to see the game officiated correctly.
Well, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think that should be everybody's ultimate goal. But there are nuances of the game that are going to be missed, is all I'm saying. I mean, there are things that happened in the pile on every play.
No doubt.
For an official to be expected to have X-Men Ray vision is insane. And this is not me going on a crusade to defend the officials, but if you and I put on zebra shirts and I was in that position, I'd miss things too. I'm the first one to admit that there are going to be things I'm going to miss.
Doubt.
At real speed, Paul, there are going to be things that are going to be missed.
No doubt. You know, the Thibodeau offsides is a little bit more excusable.
Well, because that's real speed.
It was in real speed, real time, right on the line.
Exactly.
I could understand the human eye making a mistake on that
Easily
one.
could happen.
I can't understand the pre-snap on the field goal. The guy lined up within the shoulder blade.
Should see that. No,
I get it. That's not excusable in any way, shape, or form. That's not excusable, and that cost the ball game. It changed teams' 1-loss record. That's not excusable. To me, I there's no way I can accept that. Period. But
one of the things that I don't think is brought up, you could argue maybe they should just add more officials to the crew. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You got to pay for them, obviously, but something tells me I think the NFL could afford that.
At some point, they physically may get in the way of the players, though.
Well, but
I'm a sky judge guy.
No,
I'm all for the CFL. I'm all for the CFL sky judge.
But remember, they can only do so much depending on the rule book. You could have a guy in the sky, but at the end of the day, you're still going to give him parameters or her of what he or she can see
totally
and do.
understand
That's
that.
why when I'm saying extra officials is, to your point about how do they not notice that? I mean, you could say the whole point of this official's job is to watch the long snapper and the individual lining up to the left and right. I mean, you could literally assign, meaning you don't even have to have them officiate the entire game. You could have them come in for specialty plays and have extra sets of eyes on the field. What about doing something like that? That I think is something they could look into.
There has been a thought to have like at one point they did have some conversation about adding an official who would be far downfield, who would be more attuned to do with the pass interference. Because plays that are like 40, 50 yards downfield, if there's already a guy back there and that's all he's looking for, that he might be better attuned to doing that. They did discuss that at one point.
See, that to me is practical, and that's not allowing technology to further get in the way of the game. You're adding the human element, but you're adding more eyes, more volume, and a different perspective, to your point, who may be further away from the play, but watching the play coming towards them. So, I mean, that to me, if you're going to find a middle ground, because we've heard from owners across the league, you obviously have been very vocal on this, fans across the board. To me, the best compromise is to add more officials. And it doesn't have to be throughout the game. It could be, once again, on specialty plays, for field goal attempts. When teams are in the red zone, you add an extra set of eyes because you're now in scoring position.
I'm all for
areas
anything
of
that
the
will make it
field
better.
to add more officials. I have no problem whatsoever with that. And that, to me, teams can recommend rule changes every single year. I'm surprised. If I'm a team right now, I'm a front office, I'm having those conversations. I'm saying, why not throw that out there? And why would the 32 teams overall have an issue with adding more officials?
I don't know.
That's something that I think can at least be entertained.
So much is riding on every one of these games that are won and lost.
And livelihoods are riding on it, too.
Yes.
Coaches, players,
why
100%.
wouldn't you want it to be officiated correctly for all 60 minutes if you can get it that way? Which, of course, is impossible. It's never going to be perfect all the way through.
Yep.
But in game-changing or decision-changing plays, you really should maximize everything you can to make sure that those plays are called correctly.
Want to get to a few other items related to Sunday's game before we wrap up here on BBKL, and you can still give us a ring at 201-939-4513. We talked about the Raiders' offense and how, realistically speaking, they can only change so much. One thing I want to throw out, Paul, that I wonder, Davante Adams clearly was not happy in the wake of the Monday night game. He threw his helmet on the sideline. I understand he's coming off one
7
catch
targets
for 11 yards. And Aiden O'Connell, I'm sure, if you're a young quarterback, one of the security blankets that you're going to look for is Davante Adams.
Oh, they're going to get him the ball early and often.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering, is this going to be a game, though? But remember, there's dangers in that, though. If you force feed it to a player, that could backfire on you because the Giants are not naive. They're going to realize that Davante Adams is the guy. And remember, if you go back to...
Wink Martindale said you could triple cover him and he'll still make the catch.
Well, but I would think maybe the similar approach is, they played Justin Jefferson in the regular season.
They used a lot of bracket.
Correct. That could be, I think, something that they subscribe to in this game. Because if you're the Giants defense, you have to account for Josh Jacobs. He's not having as good of a year as he did last season because I think right now teams are saying, we don't have any faith in that Raiders passing attack. It's not fearing anybody. Now, that was when Jimmy Garoppolo was under center, of course, and he's had a very unusual season, 9 interceptions. I never would have thought I'd live to see the day where Jimmy Garoppolo is leading the NFL in interceptions. Just crazy. He's such a good decision maker, but hey, it went in a different direction. Do things change now with Aiden O'Connell where they take some more shots down the field? He has confidence because, he's not worried about maybe losing his job since there's not somebody breathing down his back like Jimmy Garoppolo had. All of these things are something to take into consideration. But if I'm Wink, if Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders offense, if they want the philosophy of we're going to try to air it out against the Giants, then if I'm Wink, I want Hunter Renfrow, I want Jacoby Myers, I want Michael Mayer, Josh Jacobs a little bit out of the backfield. Those are the guys I can live with killing us. And if they win the game by having those guys get the hot hand, fine. But it's Davante Adams. You cannot allow him to wreck and damage the game because, Paul, going in, That is the number one guy and then some on the Raiders. So it's that approach that I'm wondering how the Raiders are viewing that and also how Wink is viewing that.
Well, you would think that Wink is going to have a field day as he has against the last two quarterbacks, Howell and Wilson, in terms of really causing them a lot of problems with his disguises and his various blitz packages. Neither one of those quarterbacks, had good days. I mean, they may have had a couple of good passes on each of those given Sundays.
But it was a struggle to get to
But it was a struggle to get
yeah,
there.
Absolutely.
Do you honestly think, and look, I appreciate the Raiders trying to turn over a new page and a new leaf for Antonio Pierce after what's been a very rough time for them. But at the same time, don't you think that Garoppolo's got a better chance of dealing with Wink's defense than this poor kid?
On the surface, I would say...
You would think.
Absolutely. With the way he's played this year, Paul, I'm not so sure. I've watched several Raiders games, including the Monday night game. I was on Sirius on the post game.
Yeah, he wasn't right.
Jimmy's got happy feet this year.
He doesn't look right.
Dancing.
He does not look right.
He would literally, the tap shoes are out. I'm not trying to
that.
make light of it, but I've never seen him operate like that. In all the years I've been watching him with the Niners. It's crazy.
I just wonder if they're not throwing this kid into 50 feet of cold water by making him face Wink Martindale right out of the box.
I'm sure Wink's not complaining, okay? Wink is not complaining. But I think the Raiders, and, once again, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's coach speak. Because Antonio Pierce was asked, well, why are you making a quarterback change?
Yeah.
Because people are asking the same thing. Aiden O'Connell, 2 appearances, Jimmy Garoppolo, years of experience. Right. And Pierce flat out said, as a coaching staff, we think Aiden O'Connell gives us the best chance to win. And from what I've seen this season, Paul, I would wholeheartedly agree with their assessment. I would.
Now, if Wink can get to him, if they can apply the pressure that they believe they can apply, how will he react to that? Will he make errant throws? Which, by the way, now, if you're bracketing Davante Adams and he's forcing the ball to Adams, errant throws become interceptions.
Sure.
So that works well in the Giants' favor.
Yeah.
Or, and remember, he's not a runner. He's a pocket passer. He's going to stand back there on his spot, and he's going to look to throw. He's not taking off with the ball. So does he quickly adjust and get to the second, third, or fourth target in the route and throw an accurate pass and assault the Giants that way? Or does he crumble under the heat? Wilt under the heat would be a better phrase.
Good. We'll allow the alternative as well. Yes.
I think Wink is going to try to find out.
Well, you have to. Listen, kid in his second full NFL start, there is no reason why you should not bring the heat. I just think from the Raiders' perspective, if they're wise, this would not be a game that I'd force feed the ball to Davante Adams. I think that plays right into the hands of the Giants. Not that the Giants are going to complain about that. I think for the betterment of this young quarterback, I think you have to really utilize all of the weaponry that you can, because I think that plays right into the hands of the Giants. If he, gives Davante Adams 15 targets and doesn't look the way of everybody else, I think the Giants are going to have a really good game plan to contain him. So that is going to wrap up Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, as well as the mobile app, as the Giants and the Raiders will collide in Vegas at 4:25 p.m. Eastern. Today's episode is a part of the Giants platforms everywhere, and you can also check it out on Giants.com/podcast. We'll be back up and running on Monday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern to recap all the festivities. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Monday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.